AP Euro Chapter 28 in 5 minutes.
All aboard!
After the Axis powers were defeated, conflict between the US and the Soviet Union resumed. Stalin became fearful that Eastern European countries would continue their anti-Soviet traditions, so he began to create pro-Soviet regimes in Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary. The US saw this as an unnecessary expansion of Stalin's new empire, which led to the creation of the Truman Doctrine. The Truman Doctrine stated that if any country felt threatened by Soviet expansion, the US would provide aid to these countries. In March of 1947, Truman agreed to provide Greece and Turkey with $400 million in military and economic aid. The Marshall Plan was a program that attempted to rebuild Europe after the chaos it was experiencing due to World War II. The Marshall Plan was also put in motion due to the fact that the US believed that communism flourished in chaotic environments, and in order to stop Soviet expansion, the best choice would be to restabilize Europe. Unfortunately, teamwork did not make the dream work. By February of 1948, Britain, France, and the US had made plans for the unification of Western Berlin. In order to prevent this, the Soviets blocked West Berlin and did not allow the entrance of any land vehicles. To solve this problem, the Berlin airlift was put into place. The Western Allied forces supplied Berlin with coal, oil, gas, and food through the use of airplanes. The Soviets also wanted to avoid war, so they did not interfere with these airlifts. In May of 1949, the blockade was finally lifted by the Soviets. But due to this blocking, tensions between the Soviet Union and the Allies increased. The first atomic bomb was detonated in 1949 by the Soviets, and the Cold War began. In April 1949, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was created. NATO included Belgium, Britain, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, America, Canada, West Germany, Greece, and Turkey. Eastern European states created the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, also known as COMECON. This included Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and the Soviet Union. This is not to be confused with COMECON. However, it was kind of like a Comic-Con for communists. After the death of Stalin, Nikita Khrushchev came into power. In November 1985, Khrushchev stated that the West had 6 months to remove their troops in Western Berlin. The West did not change any of their plans, and they remained in West Berlin. Khrushchev was not very successful and was ousted after the Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1959, Fidel Castro came into power in Cuba and established a totalitarian regime in Cuba. In 1961, an American-supported invasion on Cuba was launched. In 1962, the Soviets put nuclear missiles in Cuba as a form of protection. The US did not want nuclear weapons that close to the US, so an agreement was made between Khrushchev and Kennedy. Kennedy removed his missiles from Turkey and Greece, while Khrushchev removed his missiles from Cuba.
After Algeria gained independence from France in 1962, Charles de Gaulle removed France from NATO and invested money into military power. Konrad Adenauer, the Chancellor of West Germany, cooperated with NATO and joined NATO after the Korean War in 1953. Colonialism and imperialism in Africa began to fail, and most African countries had gained independence from European powers by 1970. In Vietnam of 1946, Ho Chi Minh formed a nationalist alliance called the Viet Minh and took control of northern and central Vietnam. A war between the Viet Minh and the French eventually broke out. At the end of this war, Vietnam was divided into a communist and non-communist side. In China of 1966, Mao Zedong, the communist ruler of China, had caused a civil war and used violence to erase all remnants of the past. In Korea of 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea. The US sends troops to Korea in order to stop this North Korean invasion. China then steps in and sends US troops back into South Korea. In Egypt of 1954, Gamal Abdel Nasser took control of the Egyptian government, and in 2 years he annexed the Suez Canal. France and Britain fought back, but the US saw this as a movement of colonialism and backed Nasser. In the US, civil rights movements for black rights erupted. The movement was led by Martin Luther King Jr. Canada began to industrialize, and they held a much larger role in the UN.
There you have it, folks. Chapter 28 in 5 minutes.